Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for So Chatty, episode 50 for March I was going to say March the 4th, but that would have been last week. It says March the 11th. Did you miss us? We didn't have a So Chatty last week. Reason being is I was just too busy getting things ready for the retreat and felt a little tired. And to be honest, we weren't really sure what we were going to talk about. And we're still not sure what we're going to talk about, but somebody asked us to talk about batting. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about batting, but really, we're not experts on batting. I can tell you what I've heard and what I have used and things like that. And of course, for Walter, you really haven't used any batting.
No, I just use the interfacing and
Yeah,
stuff
well,
like
that's a
that.
totally different
Yeah, I
thing
know.
for that. So we're not going to spend a great deal of time on batting. We do want to talk a little bit about and give you a preview of our plans for the Ultimate Sewing Retreat, which is our local quilt store. We're the program facilitators for that. In other words, we're the ones doing all the entertainment. And we do have some costumes for a special event, or we're working on the costumes for a special event during the retreat. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and share with you some of our ideas and how we're going about this. And you might have some ideas too you want to put in the comments below, because we have a couple of stumbling blocks yet to get over. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about pattern problems, very specific to one pattern. And that's, if you've been watching the Idiot Quilter, the strong and free quilt that I have been working on. And yeah, lots of problems there. So this probably won't be that long of an episode. And you're probably going, yay, with that. But anyway, so let's jump into batting. So I'm going to use as my guide something that I got as a freebie a month or so ago. The Quilter on Fire. Not sure what her name is. I know it's Brandy, I think is her first name, but I can't think of what her last name is. But she had a person from Hobbs Batting. Hobbs Batting is located in, I think, in Texas. And they're probably the most major of the batting manufacturers. I mean, everybody's heard of Hobbs Batting. And she gave a presentation. So as I was saying, because we just got interrupted by a crank phone call, there was a lady from Hobbs Batting who did a presentation, a webinar actually. It was a free webinar that I registered for. And she talked extensively about batting. And I mean, yeah, she talked for almost 3 hours about batting. We're not going to go that far with it. But the one useful thing I got out of that, well, actually, I got a lot of useful things out of that because she obviously knew what she was talking about. But Hobbs has this, and actually there's a glare, but I can switch over and show you this if you just bear with me for a second. I just have to find the picture. I should have been a little bit better prepared here. And I have it very close in here. And where did I put it? Okay, here we go. So I'll get this up on the screen here. And switch the camera so you can see what we see. And there you go. So this is a folder, and inside this folder are samples of all of Hobbs's batting. I'll show you what that looks like. And they are actual samples. And beside each sample is a description of what it's made from and how it is used. And I thought this was very, very helpful. So I ordered one of these. Now, the thing is, apparently the average person cannot get their hands on this. This is something they give to quilt stores for them when they want to order batting in. But the person putting this seminar together had a limited supply of these available. You paid like just for the mailing of it, which was like, I don't know, $3 or something. And I got right in on it and got one because I thought this would be very useful. Because what you see along the side of each description is an actual sample piece of the batting. So you can feel it, which is probably good to know. But on the back of this is a chart. It looks something like this that tells you what all the different battings are used for. Now, I have put a link in the show notes to this actual chart because this is something that is available on the Hobbs website. But some of these you may be familiar with, and they basically divide them into four categories according to what they're made from. Polyester batting and cotton batting are probably the two most people are the most familiar with. They're probably the ones that most of us use all the time. And then there's wool, and then there's silk. Now, wool and silk tend to be very pricey when it comes to batting, and I can't tell you what the prices are because those would vary from place to place where you're getting them from. But they are much more expensive than your polyester or your cotton polyester blends. I have heard good things about wool. Someday I might actually, if I make a quilt that I feel is worthy of wool, I might give it a try. It's supposed to be very nice to work with. It's supposed to make your quilt very comfy, very cozy. Washes well because it's a super washed wool. And yeah, and silk, I'm not absolutely sure what you would use it for, but they may tell you inside this little brochure here. But before I get into that and see, and actually I am looking very quickly in the folder, and it really does not say.
Well, I would think that silk does make an actual good batting because they have
I'm sure it
other
does.
things that you can get that are stuffed with silk, like
Yeah,
comforters and stuff.
yeah. So yeah, I'm sure it's very, very nice to work with too. It's very expensive. Uh, so now these are not ranked in order of their cost, but wool and silk are more expensive than cotton and polyester. So if you look at the top at polyester and you look at this chart, how it's designed, you have their name that they give their different types of batting, like Tuscany, Cloud Loft, Polydown, Thermore. Um, Tuscany is something that people are probably fairly familiar with in the polyester line because you can often buy the Tuscany. I've seen them in pre-cut rolls, and they'll tell you whether it's for a twin or for a queen or whatever like that, which kind of isn't bad if you don't want to go out and buy your batting by the meter or yardage, or buy what I do is I buy a huge bolt of it when it comes on sale because that's the most economical. Um, but if you don't have the storage for that, because they do take up a lot of room, the bolts, um, then this is maybe a way you want to go. It's, one quilt, one package of batting
Well,
works.
not only that, not everybody quilts as much as you do.
Well, no, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you might not need that. Now, they do talk about the product type, approximate loft, shrinkage, maximum distance between stitches for hand quilting, for machine quilting, for dark fabrics, for light fabrics. And it gives you all these ratings. So Tuscany, for example, they call it under product type resin bonded siliconized poly. Had no idea what that means. That must be the process how they make it. Okay. It's not a natural fiber, obviously, it's polyester. So yeah, that must be how it's made. Approximate loft. It means how much your stitching or your quilt top is going to rise up, basically. How
Thickness, isn't it?
yeah, thickness. So it's a 1/4 inch. Um, Shrinkage, none, but it's polyester. Polyester doesn't shrink. Maximum distance between stitches. This is something I don't pay a lot of attention to, but you probably should if you're really into intricate quilting, like free motion or something like that. Then you don't want to go beyond between your stitches. Like what they mean is the design. Let's say you're doing a pantograph or something. You want to make sure that each line is no further from the next line than 4 inches, because apparently it'll stretch it out and it won't have the same loft to it, and it might give you some problems with it. Now, I never pay any attention to this. And if you look down this chart really quickly, everything is 4 inches with the exception of heirloom natural with scrim, whatever that is, thermore, and yeah, there's only two on this list that aren't 4 inches. That, the maximum distance is much bigger on those for some reason. Then it tells you whether it's good for hand quilting. In the case of Tuscany, yes, it is. And for machine quilting, yes. Now, are there any that aren't? Well, all of their batting that they have are all good for machine quilting because everything is excellent. But if you look down the hand quilting, Cloud Loft is good for hand quilting. So is Heirloom.
Well, it's either good or excellent,
Good
so
or excellent, yeah.
you can use it either way, right?
They do have a little warning in there with some test with fabric. So I guess depending on what you're using for fabric. But essentially, I would say you could use any of these for either hand quilting or for machine quilting. Now, maybe this is important to you if you were entering your quilt into a show. You might be very picky about that. I don't know. I never think about it because I don't hand quilt. So everything that's on this list is good for me because I do only machine quilting. Then it talks about for darks. Um, I'm not really sure. They're all excellent except Heirloom 100% organic. I have no idea what that really means. I mean, for dark fabrics.
For dark fabrics, it says for dark fabrics at the top.
Oh, for dark fabrics, yeah. So I guess for if it shows through. Let's say you had a very light fabric on your quilt top and you're using a really, really dark, say a black or a navy blue or something like that backing. You don't want necessarily the color from the back to show through or shadow through lighter ones on the front. So I guess that means that if you're going to use something dark, most of these are fine with it. Although there's a couple that say test with fabric just to see if it'll show through or
I
not.
suppose unless you happen to be using some sort of not a cotton that is a sheer type fabric, you might be think twice about it, but I don't know.
I don't know. I really don't know about it. Again, this is something that I don't pay a lot of attention to. And then for light fabrics, same thing there.
The only one that's not recommended is the black for light fabrics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I guess so. Yeah. Well, you would want to use the black for light fabrics, and that would definitely be a problem. Now shrinkage is one I skipped over this one. They give you a percentage for some of these. Of course, polyester doesn't shrink, but when you get into the cottons, like I use the Heirloom 80/20. The bleached. I guess I never really looked at it and thought it did say bleached, but I guess it does because that's what I always use is 80/20. And the only other 80/20 they list is black, and I never buy black. I've never bought black. So
and you don't buy the fusible, so
no. I know I'll come back to that one though. But anyways, it says that I can expect 3 to 5% shrinkage. And this is the crinkle effect. I was listening to a podcast the other day, a quilting podcast, and they were talking about the crinkle effect. And that's where when you wash your quilt, as it shrinks up, it'll give you sort of that texture to your quilt because your fabric, for if you don't wash your fabric before you sew with it, before you do your patchwork, then of course there's probably size in it and that gets all washed out. So this makes your quilt a little softer, but there is a certain amount of shrinkage and your batting will shrink as well, and that gives you the crinkle effect, which quite frankly I like in a quilt because I think that's when I think of a quilt before I ever started quilting, that's what a quilt was supposed to be. It's supposed to be that cozy, fluffy kind of look to it. So that's really what that's talking about. And you can see with the exception of polyester, everybody else shrinks anywhere from 3 to 5%. Now, I have never ever really bothered to check. I guess maybe that's something I should do. Maybe I should, before I wash the quilt after it's done, measure it, wash it, bring it back out and see, how much it has shrunk, what my measurement is after that. I mean, quite honestly, that doesn't bother me if it does that. But I suppose if you're making a quilt specifically for, you want it an exact size, then I guess you'd want to take this into consideration too. Now, I was going to say about the Heirloom 80/20 fusible. I hate that one. I did not have good luck with that. The idea here is you don't need to use any basting spray. You don't really need to be that careful about pinning it and everything to keep your layers together. It's fusible, so you take an iron when you make your sandwich and you press all over your quilt top and on the backing, and it all sticks in place, so that'll keep everything from shifting when you go to quilt it. I didn't have any luck getting it to fuse very well.
I tried it on the one quilt that I used, that one that I did, the stained glass one,
Yeah,
the first one, and because the teacher recommended it, and I didn't like it either. It
no,
didn't seem to do anything.
I did not like that. Now, I don't know, maybe, well, first of all, maybe I wasn't holding the iron down long enough, but you gotta have, like, okay, it's just very awkward. I
Yeah.
mean, you gotta have a space big enough to iron that, or you're putting it over on your ironing board or whatever. Um, and that'll
And
stretch
and I
things.
I heard different things that you supposedly aren't supposed to iron it a lot to get it to
No,
stick. But I don't know, the time that I used it, I tried both and it didn't seem to do anything.
well, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Maybe I wasn't doing it right. I don't know, but I've never gone back to it. So, and now with a long arm, I don't need to even worry about that. But,
Yeah,
but
I could see if you're doing a really big quilt that it's a pain to
yeah.
try and get it.
I mean, it might be okay if you're doing like a crib quilt or a tiny throw or a wall hanging or something like that. You know, that might work okay too. But then again, it's already something that's small enough that do you have to worry about that? You can
Yeah.
probably just baste it the ordinary way. So I don't know. But it's available. Maybe other people have had good luck with that and like using it. I don't know. So, anyways, this is a really great chart if you want to check out things. And as I said, this little booklet that we have here, let me go back to it, um, is a really good guide. And I'm glad I've got it because I can now go in here and I can feel all the fabrics and everything, or the battings in here, and get an idea of their loft and things like that. It's much better to see it than to
Yeah.
not. Um, But anyways, that's I don't know what else to tell you about
Yeah,
that.
because you usually only use the one
Yep.
kind, and you haven't really tried different ones, so you can't really
No,
tell anybody your experience with other ones,
no.
right?
All I can
So,
go by is what I was told at that webinar that I attended. And to be honest, I don't remember a heck of a lot of it because it was information overload. This lady was very, very knowledgeable. And like I said, it went on for about 3 hours non-stop. And there were people taking notes and things like that. I think the bottom line when it comes to batting, unless you're somebody who is interested in taking your quilt and putting it in a show, a major show, because you want to win a prize, I think you use whatever you're used to. Now, one thing I've never tried, is doubling my batting. We were talking about loft earlier, how thick it is. Now, I do know you would do that if you're going to do trapunto, because trapunto, you want that's where you're stitching very heavily on it, and you want it to rise because that's part of the design and everything. But I just wondered, just on an ordinary quilt, what the difference would be by doubling it. I'm assuming your quilt would be fluffier, but I was talking about the crinkle effect. I wonder what the crinkle effect would look like. Also, I wonder if there'd be any problem in your, like, and I'm talking long arm now. I wonder if there would be any problem with your long arm.
yeah,
That
like your quilt being thicker when you're
Yeah,
trying to quilt with it.
yeah, because you're like you. I don't know if I can raise the
I
height
think you
of
can
my
actually.
foot because it could get caught when
Yeah,
you're going across. So I've never really tried it. Um, Also, would make your quilt heavier.
yeah.
That's for sure.
Might be a little bit more insulating if you want to use it for warmth.
Well, yeah, it could be, or you wanted a weighted blanket,
Yeah.
kind of an effect. Maybe so. I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know if that helps anybody out, but I think the best advice that I can give you is go into the show notes, find the link for that chart that we were looking at that tells you about all the different kinds, and look it over.
I mean,
Um,
a lot of times people will pick stuff because, well, one, it's available,
yeah,
and the other thing is price wise,
yeah. Now,
because
yeah,
when you're making a quilt, especially a big one, the cost of your batting can make a difference.
yeah, because batting isn't particularly cheap. That's why I bought great big huge rolls, because they were on for a really really good price, and I keep watching to see if they put those on sale again. Or the place I got them from, you said that they still have them at that price.
Yeah, they still have them at that price. Yeah.
I mean, I bought, how many did I buy? Was it
Um,
five, six,
I
five?
can't remember,
I think
about
five,
five.
five. I think, or no,
They're
I think
big rolls.
they're huge.
They're like 30 yards or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're
They're
big
they're big
and
rolls,
they're
and
wide. Yeah, I bought the wide batting.
because I mean we live in Canada, and I think the shop that we go to charges about what, 18 to $20
Yeah,
for a
a
meter
meter.
of it, and that runs into a lot of money.
Well, for a average size, say for a quilt that measures, you know, 80 by 96 or something like that, you're going to need a minimum. You're going to need about 3 meters of wide batting, wide back backing, wide back batting, wide 108 inch, or is it 120? Maybe it's
Well, the ones
120.
you get are 120.
120. So, that right there at $20 a meter, there's $60 right off the bat. And you want to have a little bit more than that because you want to go beyond the size of your quilt top, right? When you're quilting it. So that all adds up. Now, I thought one time I was in, we call it the F store, Fabricland here in our area, which is a really crappy fabric store. And they are more into garment fabrics than they are into
Quilting.
quilting fabrics, but they do have some, and
Their prices are very high,
yeah, out of
and
this
they
world.
do. They're one of these stores that their prices are very high. They have a lot of sales on 50% off
Yeah,
sales, but their regular price for fabrics are pretty astronomical. So,
you
like
know,
quilting cotton, the store quilting cotton. I think right now they're charging almost $30 a meter for it, for their regular price.
wow,
So, or
and it's not
29.
good quality.
And it's not very good quality, and that's a lot for a meter of fabric. So
And when they have these sales, the sale still doesn't bring it down to the price you could get at a quilt store. Yeah, they are just gouging. But they had a sale on one time on batting, and I don't know what the brand was, but it sounded good, and it was the early stages of when I was quilting, so I thought I'd try it. It was very, very white. I remember that, and it was the worst stuff I'd ever bought in my life. It was so thin. Basically, just laying it out, I was putting holes in it, and it was impossible to work with, and it just I I got halfway through trying to quilt the quilt with it. I pulled out my quilting stitches and everything, and I got rid of it. It was horrible stuff. So I'll never ever buy that again. There are other brands of batting, I am sure, out there. But as I said, Hobbs is the one that's probably the one people are most familiar with. Hobbs is quality batting. You're paying for it, but you're not paying an unreasonable amount either for it. I mean, you have to go in with the expectation, as we just said, batting is expensive. Now, some people try to avoid the expensive batting by using things from around the house, like old wool blanket. I have no idea.
well, if you're using a wool blanket, you have to use one that's washable.
Yeah, it would have
I
to be a
mean,
washable
there
wool.
are wool blankets that are washable, but
Yeah.
there are wool blankets that you're not supposed to wash. So,
Or I've heard people going to like a charity shop, thrift store, something like that, and buying old comforters type things that they're not really thick. They were cheap comforters or something like that, and using that in between, or even buying an old quilt and that's pretty threadbare and using that. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think you're going to have a lot of success with that, in my opinion. I'm just thinking about the pain in the butt it would be to quilt something like that with that in it. Um, by the time the frustration level of using something like that, and maybe some people have been very successful with that kind of thing, but I also don't think you're really saving a whole lot of money with that. It's like people who use bed sheets as backing, and I just heard something about that the other day on a podcast, and it was not recommended because they said the thread count is different from the thread count in quilting cotton, and it can cause some problems when you're quilting with it. Um, you know, you may not like this idea, but if you're going to be a quilter, I think the first thing you have to understand is quilting is an expensive hobby. You are going to invest in stuff, so don't nickel and dime it, because you're not going to be happy with the end result. If you work with cheap products, you're going to have a cheap quilt. It's going to fall apart. It's going to look like crap. It's not going to, and you're just going to get frustrated, especially if you're a newbie to quilting. Invest. Be prepared to invest. That's all I can say about that. You know, so all hobbies
I
cost
mean, if
money.
you've got a bunch of friends that are quilters too, go out and buy one of those big rolls like Steve
Yeah,
has, and split it up between
split
the
it up
two.
between you know
You know,
guys share the cost as well, because as we said, these
because the
rolls
big
have a
the big
lot.
rolls have like 30 yards on it, and they don't. Um, it ends up costing
Yeah.
you a half of what it would cost you to buy a single roll.
Well, I just finished my first roll,
Yeah.
and I think I got, I'm not sure how many quilts I got out of that. I got quite a few quilts out of that. um
Well, what the rolls have about 30
30
yards
yards.
on it, right? So if you have to pay for 30 yards, that's quite a bit of
Yeah,
money.
that's a lot
Like I
of
mean,
money.
you what you spend on the rolls about $300 for a
About,
roll.
yeah, about 300,
Yeah,
slightly over
300
that.
for a roll, and it's got 30 yards on it.
Yeah.
You can do the math. So
Yeah. And I have to admit I'm a little wasteful with my batting, because I don't want to be short when I got it on the long arm. I'm still working on my process of being a little bit more economical with that. But, you know, I probably have more batting like for overhang and everything like that than I really need. But I've run into problems before where I didn't put enough in, and you don't want to do that. You don't want to go down that road with it. Now, I have a lot of pieces though, large pieces. They're not large enough to do a quilt, but they're good enough to do for a table runner or something like that. Or you can Frankenstein your pieces together. And I have done this, and it's not hard to do. And basically, what you do is you take two pieces of batting, and you make sure you've got a straight edge. Make a straight edge for the two. Butt them up against each other, and don't overlap. Butt them and do a zigzag all down them, and it works. And the reason you want to butt them up and you don't want to overlay them on top of each other, because you're going to get a ridge in your quilt where that join is if you do it that way, and that can cause you some problems when you're doing the actual quilting as well, because I mean your needle has to go over the bump, right? Plus, it's going to make your quilt look a little uneven, too. But it can be done. And I've got a whole bunch of pieces out there that I really need to sit down and just spend a day Frankensteining it together. So that gets you even more, because I don't throw out those large pieces that I've got. You know, that's a waste. So, anyways, I don't know, anything else you can think about to talk about on batting?
well, I'm not really I haven't used it a lot, so
Yeah, I know, like never. Um, well, you did once. You did a quilt.
yeah.
You did a quilt. You
I
have
still
batting.
have one sitting there that needs to be done.
Yeah, well,
So
there you go. Well, there's a long arm out there.
yeah, I
Just
know.
slap it on and away you go.
I know.
Or wait till the quilt path comes and let the
Yeah.
machine do it. Whatever. So, anyways, okay, so that's our discussion about batting. So we're going to move on to something else that we're working on right now. We have the Ultimate Sewing Retreat is coming up at the end of March. Now, they have not had a retreat since, before COVID. So this is the first time. And we are going. A little apprehensive,
I'm a
but
little apprehensive now that they're dropping the masking policy at the
yeah,
end of
here in our
March,
province, they're dropping the
and
masking business on the 21st of March, and
and
I still think that's too soon. But mind you, we're not sure what the regulations are going to be. The way the government's put this together, to make a long story short, is they've left it up to individual venues to say, yes, you have to have a mask when you're here, or no, you don't have to worry about it. The last thing we heard was, and this was before the Ontario government made this announcement, that everybody had to be vaxxed to go to this retreat. Everybody would be wearing their masks, except when they were sitting down at their own sewing machine. Everybody would be spread out. It's a big place, so they've got lots of room to spread it out. Since this is over a 3 day period, we're staying there as well, and meals are provided. So you will be eating with your cohort of about 3 people, and there won't be any like buffet service. It'll all be plated food, and staff will all be masked and all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, now heaven, we'll see how those stick. We'll be taking our masks anyways, and I think a lot of people will be because, I mean, let's face it, people who go to quilting retreats are not your spring chickens, okay? And older you get, the more health problems you have and issues. So,
Like I was thinking, I'm wondering what would happen if, okay, let's say say we go up there and somebody gets sick.
I don't know. So I'm a little concerned about that. Um, but anyways, we're going to chance it. So we are the program facilitators. That's my term, not the store's term. But we basically have volunteered to help with sort of the entertainment during the 3 days. So we are going to be running things like I have a planned a scrap block challenge where everybody will receive a bag of scraps. This is a good way to get rid of a lot of my scraps. A bag of scraps, and over the course of the time we're there, they will design their own block. And when they get it done, an 8-inch block, it'll be put up on display, and everybody will get to vote on the ones they like the best. And it'll be it'll be a silent vote. People will be given like voting tickets, sort of a thing. And you have so many tickets, and you can, if you want to drop all your tickets into one bag that's associated with the block, you can, or you can share them out, like give this person 5 here and this bag 2 over here, whatever. And whichever ones get the most, they get a lovely little trophy that I have made on my 3D printer for that. So that's one thing. We have some other things that are planned. There's sort of like pop-up, show me a light-up seam ripper. First one that does gets a prize, and that kind of stuff. And there's an auction as well, sort of a silent auction, where the store is providing all kinds of things that they've gathered. They usually have a very good haul because they get a lot of the businesses that they deal with on the wholesale side of things to donate things. So there's jelly rolls and charm packs and all kinds of other things and notions and whatnot. Now they've had a little bit of a trouble this year with those because some of these companies have not been coming through as they have in the past. So I've made a few extra prizes myself because I like to make things, right? To supplement whatever they have. But on the Saturday night, our alter egos are attending. These are our kissing cousins, Matilda Mudslinger and Gladass Happy Bum. They will be making an appearance, and this is usually quite a highlight at the last couple of retreats we've been at. The girls, the ladies all love the cousins when they come. The cousins are a little bit outlandish in their costume and in their mannerisms as well. These girls are not long out of the trailer park. Talk whatever, but they kind of conduct an hour or two of fun activities and other things. So we have told the cousins that we will be making costumes for them. We always do their couture as well. So this year, last year the cousins went as a couple of working girls, diner girls. They had trays they came in with.
It was 2 years ago.
Was that 2 years ago? Well, yeah, like whenever was the last time we had a retreat. And I forget what the girls were at the very first one.
I think they were just, I don't know.
I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Anyways, this year the girls have gone with definitely a quilting theme for it. So we are designing their dresses and their skirts actually right now. Their skirts will be made of patchwork. And I have an example here of the patchwork, another great way to get rid of your scraps. These dresses are made up of 4 panels. Basically, think poodle skirt, circular skirt. And each quarter of the skirt will be cut out of something like this, which is just randomly sewn together fabric. But picture this as a circle skirt, and there'll be a crinoline under each of these. So these will be very flowy out there. Now, we don't know what we're going to design for the girls' tops yet. Now, of course, it is Ontario, and if it's a nice warm weekend, they could go topless because it's legal in Canada for that. But I have a feeling those girls probably don't want to do that. They don't really want to make a lot of the other people at the retreat throw up. So we have to figure out how we're going to do the tops. And then, of course, the girls will be wearing fascinators. Maybe not this one, because this fascinator that I made is a little bit on the heavy side. Trying to get it to stay on my head. Just a second here. Ouch, ouch. They also hurt. So you can't really shake your head too far or the fascinator drops off. But there you go. I think the problem is this spool of thread's very heavy on here. But it's got some fabric, it's got some spools, it's got a pin cushion on it and the whole bit, and there's a little doily that's on the top of it for that decorative look. So we'll see. But I may have to redesign this so it's a little bit lighter, a lot lighter. But I've got time for that. But here's a little closer up look at this. This is fabric. I actually stiffened the fabric and it's glued in there. See that fan shape, and then spools of thread and my now famous 3D pin cushions and things like that on it. So this will be fun. So that's what we've got. Now, if you have any suggestions, put them in the comments as well. But we have to get on with this. But yeah, this is just not going to sit on our head no matter what I do, unless it, or on their head, unless we get a drill and and bolt it into the side of them. But it'll be fun.
Oh yeah.
See, it's really heavy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it would slide right off your head. You don't have anything there to hold it on. But yeah.
Even this plastic thing is pretty heavy on there.
Yeah, well, I can make that thinner. Okay, so I do have to revamp this idea as well. Oh, maybe I can just take the thing off under here that's on your head and it becomes a lovely corsage. Oh, two of them on either side. No, never mind. Now we're getting a little bit too crazy with it. So yeah, so that's what we're working on right now. We're designing that kind of thing. Walter did finish my shirt, and if you were on Stephen and Walter Live last week, I did model it for you. So, and it's turned out quite nice. So what's your next project you're going to work on?
I'm not sure yet.
You got to get your
do the skirts.
You got to work on the skirts,
and then I want to see if I can do a couple of quick tops for it too. So.
Have you got ideas for the tops?
Well, I've got a t-shirt pattern, so I think I can just use
that
t-shirt pattern and use it as with cotton or something.
So yeah, maybe just instead of patchwork for the top, though, we do it out of maybe a wild, like a K facet or something, or something like that. That would with it. That would look good too.
I'll get on with that.
Yeah, get on with that. So anyways, those are our plans for that, and you will see pictures of the cousins when they're in their full regala with it. Okay, so the last thing I thought I would talk just a little bit about today is I finished the Strong and Free quilt. And there was a lot of problems with that, and I'm just going to show you a picture here. Okay, so here's the finished product. And yeah, it looks okay, but I'm not happy with it for many, many reasons. This quilt, first of all, should not have been hard to do. And it wasn't hard to do. But I ran into all kinds of problems. And the biggest problem I had right from the get-go, once I got the pattern, that was the hard part, trying to get the pattern for this. This is by Northcott. It's the pattern that they're using, that panel that's in the center. It comes from their 10th anniversary edition of their Old Canada line of fabric, which I really love. I love their Old Canada line of fabric. And so I cut the fabric strips the length that it was called for in the pattern. Then when I got the assembly instructions, there was a big problem. Now, I talked about this already on Idiot Quilter, so I'm not going to go into it in as much detail. But basically, they were calling for strips that were longer than what they told me to cut. And then there were some other problems with this as well in the pattern. So I abandoned the pattern and I made it work. But I'm not happy with the way I made it work. I'm not happy with this section. Oops, not that section. I'm not happy with this section down here in the bottom. If I blow it up a little bit, you see, this was supposed to be the same width as the panel, this piece up here. It was not. They made a mistake on how wide to cut the panel. If the panel had been cut down a little bit more, it would fit. Although there is a section up here which doesn't show up as well, that fit perfectly for their cut. So I don't know what they were doing in here, or the designer of this. So I added these two little strips along the bottom of it, which I could have, in hindsight, I could have seen a way I could have made that a little better to flow. If I had up here cut this section down to the same size as this section and just continued this fabric right up to the top, it would look like it was supposed to be there. First glance, unless you study it, this probably wouldn't bother you because there is symmetry in it, but it's not right and it bothers me, and that's where my eye goes immediately. The other problem I had with this were not necessarily with the pattern. It was squaring it up. I did not do a really great job of squaring it up. It doesn't look too bad, but it's out a little bit. And I had a little problem with the binding. It just went from one thing to another. So I just pressed on. I finished it. And you know the old adage, better done than perfect. And this is a good example of that. Now, the one thing I am happy about is the quilting. And I do have a better shot of that on the back. I don't know if you can see. I use fairly light, but this is a series of maple leaves and swirls. Actually, probably better. You can probably see it better if I blow it up in one of these darker sections there. Down in here, you can see the maple leaves in around here and the swirls and that. And that turned out pretty good. Just a shame about the rest of the quilt. I mean, yeah, it's not horrible, but I'm not an amateur. And this just yells to me amateur when I got it done. Now, I did some investigation as to whether or not there was a correction sheet available. Wasn't easy to find, but this came from Miss Winnie Designs for Northcott. And I did find her website, and she did have a correction sheet. Actually, the whole bloody pattern's been corrected. She showed her editing, and she has all kinds of things circled on it. It's like, did anybody proofread this pattern? Did anybody make this quilt before? Well, there was a picture of it on the cover of the quilt pattern, so somebody made it at some point in time.
Well, maybe Miss Winnie made it. And,
maybe.
Now,
I have never done one of her designs before. I don't know who she is, but she said she would send you a PDF of the corrections of the pages. She had redone the pages so you didn't see the markups on them and everything. And so I sent, just by sending her an email. So I sent her an email and asked for it, and she sent it right to me. No charge or anything like that. Of course, a little after the fact, because I had already finished the quilt with it. Now, maybe part of the problem, lesson learned here. First of all, read your pattern all the way through from beginning to end very, very carefully. I did not do that. I know you're supposed to do that, but I never do it. I think I should. The other thing is,
you should with the number of problems you've had with patterns.
Well, this was 2 in a row. Yeah, well, okay, fine. You're just... Do you read all your patterns all the way through?
No. No, because I usually get an instructor to teach me.
Oh, okay. There's the secret to that. Okay, right. The other thing, too, is oftentimes they do publish a correction sheet for a pattern too. So I think it would be a good habit for me to get into reading the pattern from beginning to end before I do anything with it. And if I do find something that I think isn't right, go and do a search to see if there is a correction.
Maybe you should go online and do a search to see if there's a correction, whether you find a problem with it or not.
Well, that could be too. Yep, that would probably be a good idea as well. So yeah, lesson learned. Okay, as I said, it doesn't look bad, but I know what the problems are. And of course, the other problem I had with this, I had it all laid out, ready to put onto Lucy. And I laid it out like you see right now. I lay it out on this carpet in my rec room to take a picture of it. And I was looking at it and realized I had screwed up this side. See, there's symmetry here, right? This is going up and this is going down. It's a mirror image. Well, I didn't have it that. I had these three pieces in the wrong order. This piece was over here, this piece was in here, and this piece was over here. Didn't look right. So I had it all sewed together. So I had to rip out 3 seams, put it all back together, and resew it. And when I did that, I'd already trimmed the quilt at that point. Because when I put these pieces together, they were longer, like I had to match them up. I didn't figure out the math on how to do it. I just matched them up from it. So I had overhang, so I figured, well, it's bottom, I can trim it off straight. Well, I did. Then when I took these pieces back out, for some reason, I had longer strips, which I don't know what happened. So I had to trim it again. The amazing part was the overall dimensions of this quilt, according to the pattern, I was only out by about 1 inch on both the width and the height of this quilt after all of that, which I don't think I've ever made a quilt that's come out exactly what the pattern says is going to come out to be. I don't think anybody does. But, you know, close enough is close enough. But, or is good enough. But anyways, so yeah, lesson learned, you know, really scrutinize the pattern before you put all this work and time and effort into it. So that's about it today. This one wasn't so much about sewing except for the skirt and things like that we're talking about. You didn't have anything to talk about in the quilting end of things, or sewing end of things. So anyways, I am working on another project. I've started it. It's a block of the month kind of a thing. And I've already run into some, well, not really any problems, but the first block is a bit of a challenge that goes into this. But it's coming along. It'll be okay. I'll show it to you when I get it done. Okay. So, nothing else to talk about? No, that's it. If you want to send us some suggestions for future shows, please let us know. If you have suggestions for our outfits, sure, throw those in the comments too. Who knows? We might consider them as well. So, hope you have a good week. Hope you don't have as many problems with your sewing as I've had with mine lately. And we'll see you next week for another edition of Sew Chatty. Say goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye, Walter.